So I'm going to stand up for a little bit, but some of this I'm actually going to sit down and live code because what can go wrong, right? I've not sacrificed a goat this morning. Well, I say live code, that's not quite true. I'm going to open Visual Studio. That's as close to live coding as we're going to get today, maybe. So I'm Luce Carter. I'm a developer advocate at MongoDB, and I'm also a Microsoft MVP for developer technologies, but that pretty much just translates to I like mobile. So this is kind of a clash of two of my favorite things together. So this is, a bit of mobile, a bit of MongoDB, and so I was like, oh, let's do it. So this all started because I saw a problem, and I saw lots of information on something I had to deal with, and I thought, there must be an app for that, right? Or if there isn't, I'm a developer. Even if there is or there isn't, I'll just make one. So show of hands, who here have had an idea for a side project? Yep, pretty much the whole room. Yeah, see, I like this. A bit like the talk I gave yesterday on productivity. The first question I asked, everyone just raised their hand. But see, we're all friends here. You're right. We're all inclusive. So this happened to me last year because I saw a list of blood pressure readings that a loved one had to keep for the doctor, and I just saw it, and it was on a piece of paper, and I was like, there's lots of things that we could do with that, and that's what inspired me to just throw an app together. I'm sure if I'd gone on the App Store or the Play Store and actually searched for this thing, I would have found it, but most of us are developers at heart, right? Where's the fun in that? And so I decided to use MongoDB's developer data platform with Xamarin and bring it together into an awesome app. And so I want to show you how I did it, and so you can maybe be inspired to do something similar yourself, whether it's with this direct technology or something else, because the best part of conferences is the inspiration you get, right? So as we accidentally saw earlier, because I was testing the clicker, this is an example of the spreadsheet that my loved one happened to show me in a picture. Now, apologies at the back, it was a bit small. All it is a list of dates, a time of day, the blood pressure reading, and the pulse. So pretty straightforward. But, this is all stored on a piece of paper, and that can get lost. That's not interesting. It had to be kept for the doctor to look at, but keeping it all together is just super boring. Something could happen to it, there's no fun, so I just thought I would do something a bit more interesting. So guess what? Demo time already, not even 3 minutes in. Because I can just show you, right? Why go to the hassle of screenshots and all those things when we can just look at it live? So this is going to be fun because I don't have to turn around the whole time. But here I have, in a very small box, let's make it bigger first before I move it over for you. There you go. So this is my very beautiful looking blood pressure tracker app. Thankfully, David Orton is not in the room, who will look at my app and go, this is awful. He is a PM on the .NET team at Microsoft, specifically Maui, but he makes beautiful applications. But we've got a login page, and the font size is tiny, so apologies for that, but we can just log in with our username, our password. If anyone gets any clever ideas, I'm going to delete this user after today, so you can't do anything naughty. But we can log in. Well, you can see we also had that create account button there. So if we didn't have an account already, you didn't, instead of clicking login, just click create account. It will take exactly the same details and create the account for you. And then again, I could never make this box any bigger to fill the whole page. There's people in the back that are going to fix this for me later today. They don't know it yet, but I'm going to buy them candy and alcohol and whatever it is that they want. But they're just to clarify, they are the best. They know that. But yeah, so we've got a very dodgy looking page, but you can log readings, so we can, I don't know. Someone give me a blood pressure, a random one. If it's maybe 19. 119 over 76. Yep, that's almost perfect. Perfect is 120 over 80, which is what inspired the name of this talk. And then pick a pulse. Are we going to be alive? Are we going to be excited? Are we going to be dead? 80, okay. 81, okay. So the other week, I ended up having to go and get precautionary ECG done because I'd taken my ADHD meds too late in the day. And if you're not aware, ADHD meds are basically speed. So I went to play squash, and squash, or a bit like racquetball, and medication don't mix. My pulse jumped to 210. So we're going to be nice and alive for this one with a pulse of 81. But then we can log it, and it should hopefully save it. If I've not left this in... I've been messing with this, I might have broken it. But anyway, we can log it. We can also, we'll do it in a funky order. We can then look at history. So it goes ahead and pulls in, oh, there we go. There's our 119 over 76 with a pulse of 81. So it's just instantly logged it in a, this is as close to pretty as I can manage in terms of what these cards look like with the date, the time, the reading, and some icons. So, you know, you can go back and look at the readings. And so it's pretty straightforward, and then you can even look at trends. So if you want to see, like, hey, how was this put together? Well, it will just load your chart. Boom. You can then see roughly what the readings have been on different dates. And so we can see that on the whole, the blood pressure, or not blood pressure, yeah, the blood pressure has been mostly perfect. So it's a pretty straightforward app, right? And that's one of the things I want to kind of share with you today, is that I made this simple app to log some things. But not only is the app simple, so is the code. So let's actually look at the code, right? Why not? We're developers. Let's have a look. I'm going to duplicate my screen now because I want to be able to see what I'm doing as well as what you can see. So here we are in Visual Studio. Oh, I should have made this bigger before I did this. Tools. Oh, not customize. I know how to do this now because Maddie's in the back of the room. He does Visual Studio tooling. So options, it's environment, fonts and colors. Yeah. Let's make this. I think Rachel was saying yesterday 14's better because 18 looks really bad because it makes everything big. Okay, well anyway, so this is, let me do Control-1. I learned about Zoom it from Maddie as well. So we've got Zoom, so we can have a look here. So we've got our project and we've got the shared code here. So we can see we've got the views for the history, the login, log readings, trends and all that. Pretty straightforward, but let's actually, you know, have a look. So login is the first one that's kind of fun, right? So it's just a simple grid. We won't worry too much about how the actual page is put together. But if we have a look at our view model, is everyone here familiar with the MVVM design, architecture pattern? Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. I like it for mobile because it's, well, it was sort of developed with mobile in mind or something like that. Or XAML was, or I don't know. But MVVM works nicely with mobile, so I like it. But it's, yeah, it's fairly, zoom in a little bit. Can everyone see that okay at the back, or is it a little bit small? Anyone? We're just going to zoom with a... Okay, just want to make sure everyone can see it okay. So this extends base view model, which comes from James Montemagno's MVVM helpers. So rather than having to write all make my own base model with notify property changed and some of the other faff you have to do, this NuGet package just makes your life super easy. And then we've got commands and we set up realms. It's pretty straightforward. So the bits that are interesting, we've got properties here for the data binding. So each of those bits on the front page, not front page, UI, as you enter the information, it will use data binding to talk to these properties, so it will update it. So we've always got the up-to-date value. Simple enough. Then it just starts to do some stuff. So say we want login. This will be one. There we go. Let's start with the write file, shall we? So yeah, logging in is really simple. We've got the email and password. One of the things we do at the start of running the application is from our app shell. So shell is I guess will be described, this is probably a very old description, but an opinionated navigation framework essentially. So it gives you a really easy way to do tabs like you saw along the bottom, or fly out, which is the hamburger menu. You just click it and it'll bring out a menu. So shell is just really helpful. So with app shell, I'm basically just saying when it's created, just quickly check if you're logged in first, because if you're already logged in, why log in again? So it just says if the current user's not null, assign the user, mark them as logged in, or check that they're logged in, and carry on. Then we had that login that you saw. So that's pretty straightforward. All you're saying is log in. Realm makes it super easy to do this stuff. We're literally just calling one line, log in. There's different ways that you can log in. You can log in using like username and password. We also support OAuth too, so Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple ID and stuff like that. But I chose to just use email password. So then I just passed in those details. And again, if the user's not null because it's successfully logged in, navigate. So shell uses root or URL based navigation. So we're basically just saying go to a root called main and then just empty out those login details. Otherwise, throw an error. But what's cool is with create account, as I mentioned, if you don't have an account already, you can just take those details you've already entered in the box and just jump into logging in. It will just take those details, create an account for you and log them in. But some clever stuff is going on behind the hood when we do this. So Realm, to a lot of people, if you've heard of it, is a database. But since MongoDB acquired Realm in 2016, in the words of Fatboy Slim, we've come a long, long way together. Although someone did correct me recently that was actually a sample, so technically Fatboy Slim didn't say that bit. But either way, we've come a long, long way together. So actually, MongoDB's developer data platform has a whole host of things under the Atlas App Services umbrella, which includes authentication, functions, and triggers. So we can start taking advantage of that in this application. So if we come into the browser, no, not that one, into the browser, and we come into here. In Atlas App Services, you can create an app. So I've got an app for this blood pressure tracker. And if we come into it and have a look, on the side, you'll see that we've got options for functions and triggers. So we've got a trigger. And what this trigger is saying, if it's not, let me zoom in a bit. The Atlas UI doesn't zoom very well, but yes, essentially what it's saying is that when you're using email password to create a new user, it's going to call a linked function that we've already created into functions called create new user document. So that takes in that user object that was passed in from just creating it, goes to get our Atlas. So it's a bit like this cluster equals context.services.get is a bit like a using statement in a C# file, essentially. It's just saying, go and get me a connection to MongoDB Atlas, our cloud-hosted database as a service. Then, our users collection is inside a database called blood pressure tracker in a collection called users. Just go ahead and insert a new user, passing in the details that we got from that object. So pretty straightforward. Just like that, we'll just click a button and it'll go in and create a whole new user for you. Which I think is cool. It makes life easier. You don't have to, you might want to do something like when you click create account, it takes you into a whole new page where you enter details like their name or an email and maybe a picture for a profile. If you want to do that, fine. But if you just want something as simple as, well, if you don't exist, just create it. This is just a super simple way of doing it. So if we come back to here. So that was just log in. Simple. Few lines. It's 85 lines of code from top to bottom, and some of that is just the Xamarin side of things. It's not the Realm things. So I just think that's super cool because I like easy. If it's easy, I'm sold. So then that's login, and then we saw log readings. So that again is fairly straightforward. It's just, as we saw, taking those details in, and then we can log a reading. So we get the current time, we set the time of day, we do some bits to turn that string of the numbers entered into actual integers that we can use. We want to know the time of day, whether it's AM or PM, so we just do a bit of clever calculation. I say clever, simple calculation of if it contains the word PM, then the time of day is PM. Otherwise, it stays as the default of AM, like we set here on line 55. Then we go ahead and start to create our app. So what's super clever here is that Realm has this ability to do partition-based syncing. So we're saying, well, create a sync configuration based on the current user's ID. So what's happening is it's partitioning off that data based on user ID. So you're not going to go ahead and see anyone else's data that you don't want to see. So we create the app, we pass in that sync configuration stuff to make sure that you only see your own information. Then we get back a Realm instance, then we find that user, and then if it comes back successfully, then great, we've got a user. And then we can go ahead and log a reading. But this reading is cool. It's a model. We're all used to models in C#, right? It's just a simple C# class. But what's really cool with Realm is that you don't need any kind of data transfer objects or ORMs or anything like that. You just give it a C# object that extends Realm object, and it will take care of converting for you from one to the other. Super easy. As I said, I like easy. But we've just got a few little bits here. So it is a standard C# object, or plain old C# object poker, I think someone called it years ago. But there's just a couple of extra little MongoDB/Realmy bits thrown in that I'll talk through. So as I mentioned, it extends Realm object. But then we've got these attributes here. So just like in relational databases, we have a primary key, because we want to just make, uniquely identify each document, because the whole rest of the contents could be identical, but you want something about it to uniquely identify it. So it uses ID. But in MongoDB, we actually use _ID. So I don't want to call my C# property _ID because it breaks all the good, conventions of how we name things in C#. So what I've done is I've called it ID in my code, but I've just said it maps to _ID so that it will take care of mapping it to the right value for us. Then I use something called object ID. So the _ID field in a MongoDB document is of type object ID that just looks like a GUID. We can just treat it like a string in our stuff, but we never need to use it. So if we're creating, say, the new blood pressure reading that we'll come back to in a second, you'll notice that there isn't anything there setting the ID because we don't care. We just want it to auto-generate it. So we just quickly say generate a new ID, and that's the last we need to worry about it. Because we partitioned it, we need to make it a required field because we need to have that partition available. And then we've got these map to attributes I mentioned. They're just mapping to what we're calling it in our C# class versus what we're calling it in the document. And it's just, again, it's the same stuff. And then at the bottom, I just did some clever stuff because I wanted the blood pressure to actually be viewed as a whole string with the slash rather than being its individual parts. And that's it. It's just a plain C# object that will map to a document. And in fact, we can go ahead and look at that document. So if we come into Atlas here, so this is all, I'm doing this inside the browser, but if you prefer the command line, we have MongoDB shell where you could do this. We have a Visual Studio Code extension if that's your thing, or we have Compass, which is our graphical user interface tool that's free and works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. There's always people that care about Linux, so do we. But we're just going to use the browser for now. But if we come in here, we can just click Browse Collections, and it's going to go ahead and bring in those readings. So we can have a look if it doesn't mess up the stuff too much. Oh, there's so much junk on this page. We're a database company, not a UI company, can you tell? But, it brings in the, let's zoom out a bit. It brings in that stuff. So we've got the object ID. That I said it looks like a GUID. We've got the partition based on the user ID. And then we've got the information that was stored. And so if we go ahead and look at user, we've got some users that were created. So we've got a user based on email. I don't mind my email. I've had people reach out to me after talks by my email. Don't use Twitter. It's on all the slides for a reason. But, we've got different users here. We've got Luce with a lowercase l. We've got test. We've got world. We've got Luce with a capital L that you saw me use before. And each of them has a unique ID. So that's just what you saw as the user ID in the reading document. Sweet. So that's, logging a reading. And as you saw, it creates that new blood pressure reading model, assigning it those values, and then writes it. So in Realm, everything is done as a transaction, whether that's a write transaction or a find or whatever. Things are done in a transaction. So what we're doing is we're starting a write transaction, and so anything that you do inside of that transaction now will just happen. So here we're just saying realm.add reading, so it'll automatically log that reading for you. And that's cool. You can also use that to say update something. So if you want to update an object, you just do it inside of the write. You don't need to explicitly say, hey, please go ahead and update this. If it's inside of a write, it'll just do it for you. So that's nice. So again, not that much code. A lot of it is just, nice error handling or setting things up or converting properties. The Realm part, super easy. There's no joins in sight, nothing like that. And yeah, as I said, I like easy. Let's start with okay. And then that's the reading. And then we've got history. We'll come back to trends in a minute, because trends is my favorite part. But trends is just pretty, history, sorry, is pretty simple. Again, it's just a base view model. We have an observable collection of blood pressure readings so that our UI can see that list, and if anything changes, it will update. And it's still really simple, we just got that list. Realm has to be called on the same thread, so this initialize realm method that I wrote is just called from the code behind. So when in the onAppearing, so when the page first appears, it goes ahead and calls this to set everything up, because it'll all be done on the same thread then, and that's what it likes. But all it does is just, again, pick things up. It's easier to just set up some of this config and get a Realm instance each time. It won't affect performance because it's super quick, like nanoseconds. Again, a few more lines of error handling, but the actual crux of it is pretty simple. It's one line. Assign blood pressure readings to a new observable collection where we're just saying, hey, Realm, get all of our blood pressure readings in a list, and then reverse the order because I want the most recent first. By default, it gives you the oldest first, and I just reverse it. Oops, sorry. Reversed it because I want everything back. So yeah, again, pretty much a few bits of config, some Xamarin stuff, and one line of code. Neat. So as I said, I wanted to save one of my favorite parts to last. And the reason it's my favorite is because of how simple it is. How many lines of code do you think it took to create that chart? Anyone? Or what fancy library do you think I was using to make this chart? Yep. Okay, so Jeffrey said 2. We got 2. So almost accurate. So the chart itself, it's just a web view, one line. And then in the code behind, because we don't even need a view model for this, boom, set a chart, one line. And we'll go into ahead in a minute what it is, like how you do it. But literally, we just set it to a URL for a dashboard, and we have a chart. No fancy graphing library, nothing. And the reason for that is because MongoDB's developer data platform has a product called Charts. All you need to do is point it at a data source of one of your Atlas databases, and it will go ahead and generate you charts based on what you specify. So I've already got two dashboards here. So another app that I wrote in Maui for house moving assistant that was supposed to be an idea Maddie gave me, but I failed to make it before she moved house. So sorry, I suck. But yeah, it's still a useful thing. But yeah, we've got blood pressure tracker. So it's just a dashboard. And you can add as many charts as you want. So this one, for example, is just, as you saw, is just a column chart. I've told it what my data source is, which is the blood pressure readings, and I was able to just go in and drag in the fields from the document that I cared about to generate those axes to make a graph, and then just embed them with one line of code. Who needs graphing libraries? Some people might, but and there's all sorts of different graphs that you can make. There's bars as well as combo, line, area, grid, circular, text, or even a great one, geospatial. So MongoDB's documents look a bit like JSON, but technically they're BSON, binary JSON, so they can support more data types than just your basic JSON data types. It can even do date, embedded objects, or GeoJSON. So if you've got something that's mapping locations and coordinates, you could then just come in here and literally drag in some stuff, and it'll make a map for you. No, that's it, boom. Here's some points, here's a pretty map. And actually, is it Atlas Search Restaurants.com or something like that? Yeah, oh, I got that right. How I got that right. She'll be so proud of me. So my mentor at work, Karen Yalme, she is an expert in Atlas Search, but she put this demo together using one of our sample data sets that you can load. But it literally loads, pick a food, American, Chinese, French, hamburgers. Someone pick a food type. What's everyone's favorite? Pizza. Okay, we'll go. Okay. So this is all based on Atlas data, and it's using Atlas Search. And because it's a demo, it's showing you what filters it ran and queries it ran to get you information. But you can see here on a map, but it's just giving you a dot. And that's just a geospatial map. It's not a Google map with fancy stuff going on. It is just a map. So that's cool. You know, you can do all sorts of different types. But yeah, it was just as simple as that. I didn't need to learn D3.js and do something fancy. I didn't need to, I think there are graphing libraries for .NET. All I did was just bring in the information that I wanted and clarify it. And specify. But what's also cool as well is that here at the top, the color contrast is awful, so I apologize for that. But in the placeholder text, it says, type a query in curly brackets or an aggregation in square brackets to pre-process your data. So you can actually pre-process your data with fancy queries or aggregations. So that's, you know, taking like an aggregation pipeline, for example, will take things in steps, and the input for one stage will be the output from the previous. So if we wanted to, and I'm not going to write this live because I don't know what the code would be, but we could do something as simple as saying, we'll work out the average pulse for this user. And so we're not storing the average as an actual field in our document, but we can go in here and make a chart of it by just doing the aggregation before we generate the chart. And then we'd have the average there. So it's just really powerful, all these things you can do. And so you can so easily just put together really, really cool charts. And I love it. As I said, it's, as you saw, it was one line. I could probably even, well, it was 2 lines, only because I signed the content afterwards, but I probably could have done this in 1 line if I wanted to. But yeah, it basically, if you want to, we're not going to make a new chart, but if you want to share it, we can either do embed. So embed will give you an HTML iframe, and obviously, you know, some of us are mobile developers, we go HTML, but you can just steal the source URL out of here and use that instead. And, you know, simple as that. And you can even change the colors if you want to. It doesn't have to be green and blue. I just chose to do green and blue. And, you know, that was it. It took me a few hours to put this together. You know, a few hundred lines of code at most, including all the boilerplate that comes with it. And I have a full app that can track blood pressure and pulse readings, have a look at trends with a nice graph. I could add other graphs if I wanted to. And I just think that's awesome. But we're not over yet. We're gonna go back to here. And I'm gonna stand up again because, you know, power pose and all of that. So one of the questions I want to ask, and you know, I've almost sort of answered this myself by showing you how few lines of code it took. But yeah, a lot of you here, recently I did a poll on Twitter. It was related to work because I was writing an article that had a brief from our SEO external agencies that suggested what keywords to target. And when I was doing a mobile article, I was seeing some keywords I would never associate with mobile, like data lake and data warehouse. So I posted this tweet to say to people, when you hear mobile database, what do you think of? What do you think their response was? SQLite. When you think of mobile databases, everybody thinks of SQLite. But SQLite, it's not the answer to everything. So, you know, why did I use MongoDB Realm instead of an Atlas App Services instead of SQLite? Well, the answer is it just makes it easier, to be honest with you. It's, as you saw, we had partition sync, but it also uses full-on device sync. So out of the box, you have a local database stored on your device, but then it can point to your Atlas database in the cloud, and it will take care of online, offline sync for you. So if you're moving around with your phone on a flight, like some of us were to come here, or on a train, or just moving around, it just works. You know, it will take care of it for you. Your app users will still be able to use your app. It will just take care of syncing it back up to the cloud when you're online again. Because, you know, in a world where we're always expecting to be connected these days, especially after the pandemic, it sucks when you can't use your app because it's just gone offline. And, you know, the flexible sync is great as well. So it's not just syncing online, offline, or partition sync like we saw, but flexible sync allows you to pick which parts of your document you sync at a different time. So imagine that these blood pressure readings were part of a wider document about a patient. It's your medical records. Well, if you're a patient and you're looking at your medical record, you don't need to see all the scary medical terms that mean nothing to you. You just want to see the bits that matter, like, you know, your medication history or your blood pressure reading history. Whereas your doctor will want to see everything. Maybe a nurse only wants to see part of it, like known allergies. So flexible sync, you can just pick the parts of that document that matter. We can do permissions, so it's all secure. We can even do client field level encryption. So everything is encrypted. Even we cannot read what's in your data. So it's nice and secure. And it's just fast. And as we saw, we don't need an ORM or a data access object or anything like that. That can all go out the way. If any of you were here at the Women of .NET workshop on Sunday, you would have seen that the weather forecast service had a DTO, for example. Well, when I added MongoDB Atlas to that, I just removed the DTO. Don't need it anymore. Just take that simple model and just map it to a document for us. As you saw in the document, it looked exactly as we expected. Field value matching the names of the properties that we gave it in our C# object. And I like the fact that it uses Atlas, because Atlas is based in the cloud. It means that if I want to reuse this data for another app, just point it at the same application. The data will be there for you. And you'll see why that comes in useful in a minute. But what other things do I want to do with this, right? I've got this whole app, and it's pretty simple, and it looks ugly, and the box doesn't expand. What else do I want to do with it? Well, one of the things I want to do is add HealthKit support. So I know HealthKit is Apple's HealthKit, so it's, that's locking you in. But all the best people I know use iOS and move from Android to iOS. And so, because most of my loved ones are on iOS and are actually interested in this app a little bit, especially some of my older relatives, they want, it's actually, okay, we can use something that supports iOS. So I want to start using HealthKit, because Apple Watches from Series 6, I think it is, onwards, can start reading things like oxygen levels and your pulse. And so I want the ability to just automatically log this stuff. Sadly, you can get wrist blood pressure monitors, but that is not an Apple Watch, and so we haven't got blood pressure just yet. But pulse is something that can change quite frequently, and people are more interested. I mean, certainly, when I was having to sit down with a pulse of 210 and checking my readings every few minutes, I was more interested in my pulse and my blood pressure at that point. But so that's one of the things I want to do, is just have the ability to log things automatically. I also want to add more charts. So at the moment, we've just got one single chart type, but it'd be quite cool if I could add maybe sub-tabs. So you're having a look at different chart types depending on what you're interested in. So it might be, what is a rolling average? We can maybe do that combo chart type, where we take a rolling window of 30 days and say over the course of 30 days, what's been the average of your pulse and what's been the average of your blood pressure reading. So lots of different charts that we could do. And as you saw, with charts, it's so easy. I can just pick the chart type that I want. And a fun one, and so this is cool. So .NET MAUI. You're probably sat here thinking, Luce, you've just shown us a Xamarin app. It's 2022. MAUI's in GA. Like, what? What are you doing? Well, one of the cool things is that, hey, guess what? Confetti time. Realm already supports MAUI. Because it's just .NET under the hood, pretty much everything just transfers over. And in fact, I actually made a start on trying to swap between the two. But if you're in Sweeky's talk yesterday about migrating from Xamarin Forms to MAUI, you might have heard us say that if you're going to be doing a migration to MAUI, as well as not panicking and all these other things, you need to put on a MAUI shirt. So we're going to do just that. I've come prepared. Here's what I prepared earlier. We're going to put on a MAUI shirt to talk MAUI. So we could get excited at the back. There we go. So we're sorted. I can take myself off to Hawaii, and we can have some good time. So I did start to do this, and actually, in between making the Xamarin Forms sample app and then making the MAUI app, I learned some stuff, and so I want to share with you that. And the app's not complete yet. I hit a bug that I'll explain, but I learned some things I want to share with you, because if you're going to do the same, these are useful things to learn. So if we come into Visual Studio, we have an aptly named blood pressure pulse tracker, because that's how I differentiate between them. So I'm going to close it all. Yeah, save that, that's fine. So if you've not seen a MAUI project before, it will look a bit smaller than the one that we looked at before, because let's just minimize all the folders. I can't remember how you do it. Nope, I'm dragging too much now. But anyway, it's pretty straightforward. A lot of the stuff is still the same. We still have that realm object for both blood pressure, pulse reading, and user. But then we've got the view models and everything that we'd expect. The only thing missing is the about page because I decided not to bring it in. But and a lot of it is the same. So login is identical. I've just taken advantage. It will look slightly different because one of the things I learned was about source generators, which comes as part of the Maui community toolkit. So rather than having to have all that boilerplate with iNotify property change and on-property change and all the stuff that I tried to get out of with that NuGet package from James, we can just use source generators. So we make it a partial class without the extra space, make it extend observable object, and then all we do is rather than having those lowercase and capitalized properties that we bind to, we just have the one with the lowercase and attribute observable property. That will then go ahead and make it available in data binding capitalized. But you're already reducing so many lines of code just by switching over to source generators. And then again, rather than having to have that constructor where we declared the I command, which is for the, when you click a button, what should happen? Instead, we don't have to say, okay, create a new command that points to this method when it runs. All we have to do is define that one method and then decorate it with the relay command attribute, and then away you go. You have commands that you can just get on with. So again, it's still the same old. If we've already got a user, then just go straight to that main page. Log in with their credentials. If it works, do that. Create exactly the same. So this is a great thing. I could have done the upgrade assistant that Sweeky talked about yesterday to go from Xamarin Forms to Maui. But to be honest, Maui is such a nice experience as an 8-year Xamarin Forms developer. I kind of like doing file new because I like the satisfaction of being reminded how much easier it is. Especially in an app with lots of images. So one of the cool things that differentiates Maui from Xamarin Forms is the way that it handles images. So let me just open the images folder and then we zoom in. So you can see I have a lot of images. In the Xamarin Forms project, what I had to do was actually go ahead and generate the right sizes for every platform for the images so that it would do its best to use the right image size on the right platform. Yeah. And that's cool, but we don't have to do that anymore. We just stick it in a folder called images, one version, and it takes care of the rest. So that's another reason why I enjoy making file new Maui apps, because I like just being reminded how easy some stuff is. If you're like me and you've done Xamarin Forms previously, you probably also appreciate what a great job the team have done. So that's images, and then we've got, it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, everything else is pretty much identical. We take advantage of global using. So if you're in Layla's talk about ASP.NET, like for experts, was it, or .NET 6? I can't remember the talk title, but it was a really good, interesting talk. But she talked about global usings in the way that if you've got using statements that you're using across multiple files, stick it in a file that I've called globalusings.cs, but you can call it anything else, bob.cs, jump.cs, Hawaii. As long as you use the keyword global, it will make it available across classes so you can avoid repeating yourself. So that's one of the wins we get from .NET 6, which Maui's built on top of, if you're wondering why I just said .NET 6 in a Maui app. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing that I did differently here is with the list of readings. So if we go into history, so it's an observable collection. Oh, it's not history, is it? It's in here. There you go. So one of the things I learned is that a better way of doing it, instead of having to create that new instance every time, is just to create a service where we can just, a static class that gets an instance of Realm. We've got one that's either doesn't take configuration or one that does, and then it will just get us back an instance. So it's just little wins here and there. And one of the things that my colleague told me that I've not done, because I just need to talk to him about it, but I'm going to teach you because I couldn't work out the code, because everyone's different levels of development skills, right? Is that actually we didn't need to wrap it in an observable collection. So I did, because I hadn't got around to updating it yet. But one of the great things about Realm is that actually the object that comes back is already implements iNotify property changed. So you don't even need to wrap it in an observable collection. It will automatically handle updating your UI whenever something changes in your list of collection of documents. So that's just something cool. But yeah, on the whole, it looks identical. We can even run it. And you can see the one bug I've got. And I'm calling it a bug and not a self-inflicted mistake, because engineers on the Maui team have looked at this and even said, I don't know what's going on here. But that's OK. But we can look. But we can log in. And it looks almost identical, because I really did pretty much just copy and paste the code. So it looks slightly different. I tried to make it look slightly better this time, but we're logging in exactly the same user. Give it a second. Slightly better looking. See, not just Xamarin Forms and moving to Maui. The UI improved slightly too. But again, we can log reading. So it was 118/80. Well, -1 to make it different. And then 76. Log a reading. So we don't have the colored icons at the bottom. By default, your icons are monochrome. You can apply color. I had to do a custom renderer, basically, to go down in the platform level and mess it around to make it colored. But the transition didn't work on Maui like it worked on Xamarin Forms, so ignore the ugly-looking thing at the bottom. But this is where the bug exists. For some reason, it doesn't display the data. It pulls it in, all right. If we check, it's not there. But on the whole, it's pretty much exactly the same app. I've just copy and pasted pretty much the whole thing. So the plan is to try and fix Realm's great. Try and fix the Maui problem that's not making the display. And I've tried different types, like collection view, list views, all of that just doesn't seem to want to display anything. But we can still enjoy other perks of Maui, like the XAML Live preview here on the right. So that's actually updated with what's going on. But that's super cool. And so I think, there you go. So today you've just kind of seen a little bit of the app that I threw together with Xamarin and Realm, and how easy it was to do. And I love that. It's like you saw, a few lines of code. I could use online, offline sync out of the box. It's all there. We can browse it view it in the browser if we want to. And it was just something I did on the side because I wanted to. So hopefully you too will also be inspired to just go away and start creating some side projects with Realm, because whether it's Realm or MongoDB and their C# driver, it's just super simple and awesome, and I love it. Thank you. And this QR code at the bottom will take you to a gist that I put together that's just got the slides, and then the link, some further links for information, like if you want to learn more about MongoDB, there's stuff on there as well. And of course, links to both GitHub repos, both the Xamarin Forms version and Maui. Anyone got any questions? We've got time, I think. Maybe, maybe not. So because it's got the local database on the device, when you log in, it's associated with their user ID, and so it will always create the documents in that local database. So you've always got it on the device as a local database, and then it just automatically will talk to the cloud and update it for you. So it's like having a local database, but someone else is taking care of the effort of putting it online without any of the network retry handling or error handling or anything like that. Thank you. Ooh.